Ho, 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 happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and everything. Welcome to the Requel pitch. It's Tyler back in the car. Chill is in the air. Songs are bouncing. And I have a question. Can you remake a Christmas movie? Yeah, I mean, you can, right? But why? So, that's what we're here to talk about. Miracle on 34th Street was remade. And it's been a while since I've watched the remake. Because there's a charm to the original. And maybe this holiday season I'll rewatch the remake. I just remember the male scene not being there and it being so cool in the original. But why remake it, right? I think sometimes movies get remade because people don't like to watch old movies. Like, would you ever remake It's a Wonderful Life? No. Would you just take that concept and readapt it and throw it in other things and twist it around? Yes. Same thing with The Wizard of Oz. Like, there's never been like a film directly remaking The Wizard of Oz. It's always been a spin on The Wizard of Oz. Take the recent release Wicked, which is based on the Broadway prequel thing, or Oz the Great and Powerful, which is still kind of a prequel thing. There was The Wiz, which was a spin, and different iterations, but no one's ever really remade The Wizard of Oz. Should they? I don't know. Doubt it. No. So there's tons of movies, tons of holiday fare. The Santa Claus has its own franchise. And a quick note on that, just talking about holiday films, is I feel like the first Santa Claus was written, and I know it was, to be a little bit of a darker, more serious film, that the tones and the underlines are in that movie. Like, it's enjoyable. I like it. But there's some serious stuff in that movie. And I feel like it kind of exists on its own, because when you get to the second film, there's good in there, and I've talked about that before. But I would love to, that's a movie that could be remade, but you can't. But 2, 3, and the TV series, it kind of exist in their own world because it's lighter, it's funnier, you're much more in touch with a world of the holidays, you're away from just being Santa and more of the grounded seriousness that was in The Santa Claus. And it's sad that it went that way, because it feels like diminishing returns to 1,000. I watched the first season of The Santa Claus. It took me 2 years to watch it because I only wanted to watch it at Christmas. And it was interesting, but it just lacked something. And I feel like the first Santa Claus it's grounded, and there's a real, and it's a one that I think you return to over and over, more so than the sequels. Santa Claus the movie I really like. I think David Huddleston is probably the best on-screen Santa, as he just projects this big, lovable guy. So many other on-screen Santas play where they're humorous, or there's something off. Like Paul Giamatti as Santa was weird. Ed Asner was good as Santa, but I'm so used to hearing Ed Asner as the voice of Granny Goodness in the Superman the Animated series and stuff. Like, it was just, he's funny, but there's also kind of a standoffish coldness to him. Let's see. Kurt Russell was great as Santa, but that's a whole different kind of, with the Christmas Chronicles and everything with that. I feel like David Huddleston, pitch perfect Santa Claus. All right. It's hard to really capture. And like I said, I used to love Tim Allen as Santa. And I do for the first Santa Claus movie. And then it's, like I said, it kind of gets a little diminished. But my pitch today is I love the concept of Santa and the world of that character. And I don't always like when they quote Christmas is about gifts and about Santa. And, oh no, we have to save Christmas because people don't have their gifts and Santa. the holiday is more than just Santa Claus, right? It really is. No matter where you come from with the religion or not. And the holiday is also fascinating because of all the other holidays and cultural elements that are blended in. Like Netflix did A Kid Called Christmas or whatever, which was cool. It was different. And I have my own Santa movie pitch that is a script that I wrote about Santa. I studied for a while the different lores and legends of the holiday and was trying to bring it together. But today, because of our Requel podcast, what I'm pitching is a live action remake of Santa Claus is Coming to Town. That's right. Those wonderful, amazing, awesome yearly watches of the good old Rankin Bass Santa Claus and holiday features. Now, I love Santa Claus is Coming to Town because I love how it's the story of Santa. And we have, the winter wizard or winter warlock, that element of magic. I just picture when I see that character, I think of the Wizards of Winter by Trans-Siberian Orchestra as being kind of this theme song almost for him. And there's such a great charm to how he gets the reindeer to fly, how the reindeer live forever. And into Santa Claus the movie, one thing I loved was when the elf come to Santa and basically tell them they will live forever. And that movie is great. I highly recommend trying to find it. It's kind of had a little bit of a resurgence over the past few years. I love the first half of that film. I feel like it kind of falls apart a little bit at the second half of the movie. But it's still a great movie. But I like the idea of telling Santa's origin from Santa Claus is Coming to Town. You have the song that everybody knows and enjoys, right? You have the idea of how he meets Mrs. Claus and Jessica. But you get this small town. It's more Germanic, and you can add more to it of the culture and the history. And it's set in this time frame that we're not 100% sure exactly when this is going down. There's been nice stories and graphic novels that have incorporated things like Grant Morrison's Claus with art by the amazing Dan Mora. The film Claus, that is a holiday treasure in our home that is amazing. It's on Netflix. Gosh, it's one of those that if Netflix ever put it out in physical media, I'd buy 2 copies just to have forever. I cannot express how much our family loves that movie. It's Jenny and I the other night were cannot wait to watch this again with the kids every year. It's such a comfort film. But there's something charming to those Rankin Bass in the story of an orphan who's found by a small family of toy makers. And the elves things that I think you can play around with. Are they really elves, or people just kind of, because they were living in the woods, they're old, beard, and maybe their culture and their way of life clashes with where they live. So they are made fun of for their stockings, the being pointy or whatever, and it also helps reconcile that his name is Kris Kringle, because he's adopted by the Kringle family. We have Tanta Kringle, who always reminded me of my grandmother. And then you found out that when the baby was born, all it had was a necklace that said Claus. And that's how you get, and you can even put in Claus, and he doesn't really know, and he finds out later that is another identity that he has, whoever this Claus was. And you have the idea that Kris Kringle becomes an outlaw and is hunted, so he has to change his name and takes on, Claus. And the red suit has its origin, the beard, He already had the laugh and the stockings. And there's such a beautiful charm to it that holiday movies sometimes forget, or they over convolute things. And it's hard to have a really high quality production anymore on a holiday film that doesn't film that has been sanitized by modern day, or it loses something by trying to be too hip. Like a couple years ago, Disney Plus put out the film Noel, and I was excited to watch it, and we watched it, and it was okay. I really don't remember much about it, honestly, because I feel it was trying too hard. I think there's something pure and magical about being classic. Years back in the 2000s, there was 2 movies that were made by ABC Family called Snow, and I thought that had a really interesting twist of the Santa Claus story and origin. It had Tom Cavanaugh in it. Tom Cavanaugh was great. But, they were good movies, but low budget. This year coming out, we haven't seen it yet, is going to be Red One with The Rock and J.K. Simmons and Chris Evans, and that looks cool. But once again, I feel like it's going to be fun, I think, but over the top and a lot. And I think by setting this in the past, there's a classic to it. You're not dealing with a lot of modern tech of how Santa has this modern tech and, elf magic or something. There's a purity to it that I think gets lost in modern trying to tell the Santa story or tell a story about Santa. And I just feel that just kind of making a live action version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town would be really cool to have. And it's such a simple story that you can do small scale, and you can do it stylistically as well. Like, you don't have to go all out crazy like 200 million or make it look like Santa exists in Tim Burton world, but you can make it to where it's almost like a book. And I think a charming way of doing this film would be to have it open with someone reading the story to their kids or something. And you have these kids that are sitting down and they're asking about where Santa came from. And you have the mother pull off the book from the shelf and begins to read to them. And that part can be set in modern time. They're like, the book is called Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And you can tell the children that, where the song came from originally was a line out of this storybook. And it can be an old book, too. I love movies and shows that have these old books, right? And she reads the stories to the children, and she tucks them into bed. And, the story, the movie's concluded as far as the story, is she goes downstairs, and there's Santa at the chimney. And it's the same Santa from the book that she just read. And she smiles and kind of nods at him. And he references her name. And it's like, says something like, "You've still been a good girl." And she smiles. And he's like, "I heard you reading my story tonight. Thanks for keeping me alive." And there's a sweetness to that. And I think a really cool orchestral version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, with a full orchestra, would be really beautiful to just highlight the story. And I'm getting really emotional just thinking about it, because Santa's not real from a certain point of view. I've said that a lot to people about what is Santa Claus really when they have to tell their kids things. And we all kind of are a part of Santa, right? And I won't go into that whole theory, but I just think there's a beautiful classic movie waiting to be made that hits all the hallmarks of a traditional Christmas film and the good thing about films like that is, you're revisiting yearly. And the Rankin Bass stuff is so cool because some of them connect, like, later with Heat Miser and Snow Miser and stuff. And I wouldn't go that far because I feel like that gets fantastical. You're already on the border with Santa and the fantasy element. And it depends on how you want to go with the stories, right? But I just think there's a charm to Santa Claus Coming to Town because, in the original Rankin Bass special, we have the postal man who's delivering letters, who is our narrator, who's telling a group of children the story of Santa. So in this, we would have a book being read to the children. And happy holidays. Merry Christmas. And I hope everyone just remembers that it's not about getting, it's about giving and making other people feel loved. That's truly what Christmas is about. So take care.